Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Rabbi.
We're learning Mishnah Pesachim, Parak Beis, chapter 2. We're going to do two Mishnahs today, Zayin and Ches, 7 and 8. Ein Shairin es Hamurs on the Tarnagolim. One may not soak bran in any water to give it to the chickens. Why? Why do you think you can't soak it in the water? Become chametz, right? If you soak it in on Pesach, and again, whether we're talking about warm water, cold water, it could become Pesach, it could become chametz. Okay, avol cholten, but you can scald the bran in hot water, because believe it or not, there's a certain level of hot water that actually prevents chametz from happening. And once the hot water cooks the grain can never become chametz again. Now they bring down here on the bottom from the Mishna Brura. Now, actually the Bartanura says it. Nowadays, we do not permit the scalding of grain on Pesach for fear that one will use water that was not heated sufficiently, right? So if you use warm water, I believe warm water actually speeds up the process.
Yeah.
But if you scald it, which I believe means you basically have the water boiling and you're pouring into the boiling water, so there is such a thing that actually that would prevent chametz from happening. But our practice is not to do that, lest we actually don't do it properly.
So, and if it becomes chametz, even if that's just a short stage between, being not chametz to getting scalded sufficiently, so it's not chametz again. But if it becomes chametz at any point there,
well, the point is that scalding, yes. So, but the point is that scalding is not whatever this cholton is exactly. Yeah. It's not. It's supposed to prevent chametz from happening at all.
Yeah, it's like laxate.
Right, whatever it is. Yeah. Okay. Next, ha'isha lo'sishra es hamursan. A woman should not soak bran. Shetayach biyado lamerchatz, that she'll take with herself to the bathhouse. Apparently, they used this bran to rub on their skin to clean themselves. And again, if you soak it on Pesach, it can become chametz. Aval shafahi b'v'sara yavesh, but she can rub dry bran on her skin. Meaning, if she just uses the dry bran, meaning she didn't soak it, it's dry bran, and she's using that to rub on her skin, that she may do, even though she may be perspiring. She's in a bathhouse; it's hot there. She may be perspiring, so there's some liquid there that the bran can come into contact with. But the point is that perspiration does not cause grain to become chametz. Okay? Now, the Mishnah then says, Lo yilais adam chitin. A person should not chew on wheat kernels. The yaniach amakase bepesach, and put it on his wound on Pesach. Apparently, when people got a wound, you chew on the bran and stick it onto the wound. Well, the problem is you cannot do that on Pesach because it's not possible that they might become chametz. Even though perspiration does not cause chametz, saliva does. And therefore, it says you should not chew on it on Pesach for the purposes of putting on your wound. Mishna Ches. Ein neistin kamach, one may not add flour. L'sei chareses, into chareses, which here, it does not mean the chareses of the Seder. Chareses is also a word that's used for a type of a dip. And it was a dip that was made, you'd add flour to water and vinegar. Okay, that was the chareses. Yeah, the water, the vinegar, and you added flour to it. It's a type of a dip. So you cannot add flour into the chareses, or into mustard. Mustard was water mixed with crushed mustard seeds. And we say that you cannot add those things on Pesach. Why? Because this kind of a mixture can actually speed up the chametz process. Typically, we say if one of the 5 grains in water sits together for 18 minutes, that's when it becomes chametz. But there are certain situations where chametz is speeded up. And that would be one of these cases where you're talking about the water with the vinegar that you add flour to, the water with the mustard seed that you added the flour to. There, the chametz is going to happen quicker. The imnasan, and if you did it, you weren't supposed to, but you did it, it may be eaten immediately because it doesn't become a chametz right away. Now, the commentaries point out that this line is talking about the flour to the mustard. You add the flour to the mustard, it's gonna become chametz quicker than 18 minutes, but you have a little while, you have a bit of time before it becomes that way, and therefore they say you can eat it right away. Not only can you eat it right away, you should eat it right away because you don't want it to become chametz. But in the case of adding the flour to the chareses, adding the flour to the water and vinegar, that we're concerned that it happens immediately. And therefore, if you were to add it on Pesach, you would not be allowed to eat it. Okay? Rabbi Meir Oyser. Rabbi Meir forbids, which means, according to what we just said, according to Rabbi Meir, whether you add the flour to the chareses, to the water and vinegar, whether you add the flour to the mustard seed, to the mustard, at the end of the day, we are concerned that it can become forbidden right away, and therefore, in either case, you may not eat it at all. Next halacha. Ein mevashen es ha-pesach. We do not cook the carbon Pesach. Loi b'mashkin, v'loi b'mei peres. Not in any liquids or fruit juices. Now, we know the Torah tells us that the carbon Pesach may not be cooked. We cannot eat it partially roasted or boiled. Now, where the Torah says, and boiled at all in water. So the Torah talks about boiling in water. The Mishna is saying that from the double wording of ashal mavushal, which they translate as at all, don't cook it at all, that includes other liquids. And it's interesting in the wording of the Mishnah that it says mashkin v'lo mei peres. Mashkin means liquids. Mei peres are fruit juices. Aren't mei peres liquids too? The answer is that whenever we use the word mashka, whether sometimes use the word liquid or beverage for it, it refers to the 7 liquids, the 7 beverages that can make food tameh. We mentioned many times before, for food to be able to be susceptible to tumah, it must come into contact with liquid first, but not any liquid, 7 specific liquids. Let's see if I can remember them all. Water, blood, milk, oil, honey, date honey, dew, wine. I said wine. Can't remember them all. Yeah. But there's 7 of them. So whenever you use the word mashkin, it means those 7 liquids. And may pay as opposed to any other liquid.
Or a beverage.
Yes, but it means these 7. The may Paris. Then when it says no fruit juices, that means apple juice, orange juice. Yeah. Those aren't one of the 7 liquids. But so the point is, therefore, it says it in 2 different words. It categorizes it differently. Bottom line, you can't use any of them for cooking for cooking the carbon Pesach. Avol sachen, but you can. Sachen here means, but you can smear them. Okay. Umatbilin oisay bahen, and you can dip them in them. Okay. What that means here is, according to the first shot in the Bartanura, after you have roasted it, if you want to go ahead and you want to, let's say, dip it in to these liquids, you don't want to, after you roast it, you want to dip it into one of these liquids. So the halacha is that you're allowed to do it. Okay. You may smear these liquids or on it or dip it into them. Meaning, you have your carbon Pesach, you roasted it. Now you want to smear some honey on it. Okay. Or you want to go, honey would be a liquid. Or do you want to put some apple juice on it? Or you, no. Or you want to dip it into the apple juice or orange juice or, I don't know, prune juice, whatever it is that you want, right? At the end of the day, being that you roasted it and now you're just dipping it afterwards, we don't say, well, by dipping it, this dip flavor will overcome the taste of the meat. We say, no, that's not a concern. That's one pshat. The Bartanura has another explanation that actually means that before you roast it, you can baste it in these liquids. That's a second pshat of the Bartanura, of the Bartanura. It doesn't mean after you roast. It means you can actually do it before you roast it. But as long as you're roasting it, afterwards you're not cooking it, you're just basically smearing it, basting it in that wouldn't be a problem. Next, May Tashmisha Shalnachtim. You got a baker. And the baker is working on the dough for the matzah. And as he does that, he periodically puts his hands in cold water to cool them down. You don't want your hands heated up because that could add to the chametz process. So therefore, as he's working on the dough, he sticks his hand in water to cool it off. Now, that water is going to have pieces of dough in it from his hands. So what do you do with that water? Yishavchu. You pour it. You pour it out, which really means you pour it onto a sloping surface. Because if you don't do that, if you pour it and you allow the water to puddle, and now the dough sits in the water, it can become chametz. So therefore, you have to pour the water onto a sloping surface so that it will be quickly absorbed into the ground, rather than collect in a puddle, which would allow the pieces of dough to become chametz. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Rabbi.